The night my own daughter testified against me, I felt something inside my chest quietly die. Not anger, not shock, something deeper, something that had taken 58 years to build. They called it justice. I called it betrayal. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cheap coffee, and the ceiling fans spun slowly, as if even they were tired of watching human beings destroy each other. My name is Harold Whitaker, and once I was the owner of Whitaker Transport, a logistics company worth nearly $40 million. I had 3 warehouses across Texas, contracts with major retailers, and a reputation for being a fair man who kept his word. But on that rainy Tuesday morning, none of that mattered. I stood in shackles while my daughter, Emily Whitaker, raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. She wore a navy blue dress and pearl earrings I'd bought her on her college graduation day. Her eyes never met mine. "My father ordered the falsification of the shipping manifests," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "When I confronted him, he threatened me. He said the company mattered more than family." The jury leaned forward. I remember one woman in the front row shaking her head slowly, already convinced. I wanted to shout that it was a lie, that I'd never touched those records, that the numbers had been altered weeks after I'd handed control to my son-in-law, Mark. But my lawyer squeezed my arm. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "It won't help." 2 hours later, the verdict came back. Guilty of corporate fraud and conspiracy. 7 years in federal prison. The judge's gavel sounded like a coffin lid closing. Prison changes a man, not just physically, though I lost 30 pounds and most of my hair turned white. It changes the way you think. The first year, I kept expecting Emily to visit, to explain, to cry, to say she'd made a mistake. She never came. Instead, Mark showed up once, wearing a smug little smile and an expensive watch I didn't recognize. "Emily's busy," he said through the glass. "Running the company is stressful." That was the moment the truth finally settled in. They hadn't just testified against me, they had planned it. By my 3rd year inside, I stopped counting the days. Instead, I started listening. Prison is a university if you pay attention. You meet accountants who know how money disappears without a trace, lawyers who lost everything after one mistake, hackers, brokers, men who once ran companies bigger than mine. And one of them, a quiet older man named Victor Santos, changed everything. Victor had been a financial investigator before his own partners framed him. He spent his nights drawing diagrams on scrap paper, showing me how shell companies worked, how funds moved through offshore accounts, how signatures could be traced back through digital timestamps. "Your case doesn't smell right," he told me one night. "If you were set up, the trail will still be there. Money always leaves footprints." For 2 years, Victor taught me everything he knew. When he was released, he shook my hand and said, "When you get out, don't look for revenge, look for truth. Truth is what destroys liars." On the day I walked out of FCI Beaumont, the sky was bright and painfully blue. I carried everything I owned in a small cardboard box. No one waited at the gate. No daughter, no friends, no company car, just a quiet road stretching into the distance. I thought I was alone until a black Lincoln Town car rolled up beside me. The driver stepped out, mid-30s, crisp gray suit, calm eyes. "Mr. Whitaker?" he asked. I nodded. "My name is Daniel Ross. I used to work for you, accounting department, 5 years ago." I barely remembered him. He opened the back door. "Get in, we need to talk." Inside the car, the air smelled of leather and new beginnings. Daniel handed me a folder. "I never believed the charges, so after you went inside, I started digging, quietly." The folder was thick with documents, bank transfers, email chains, invoices. Every page told the same story. Money from Whitaker Transport had been funneled into a consulting firm called Blue Ridge Solutions. That firm, in turn, paid large management fees to another company owned by Mark. The signatures authorizing those transfers all dated weeks after I'd been arrested. "They set you up," Daniel said softly, "and I can prove it." I leaned back in the seat, staring at the papers. 4 years in prison, 4 years of humiliation, and the evidence had been sitting in bank records the whole time. "Why help me?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "You gave me my first job, paid for my CPA exams when my father got sick. Figured I owed you." That was the moment I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't erase loyalty. It just reveals who truly has it. Over the next 6 months, we worked quietly. Daniel hired a top defense attorney using his own savings. We filed a motion to reopen my case, presenting the financial evidence. The court agreed to review it. Meanwhile, Mark and Emily were busy celebrating their success. They'd expanded the company, bought a lake house, and appeared in business magazines as young entrepreneurs reinventing the logistics industry. Then the subpoenas started. First the bank, then the consulting firm, then Mark's personal accounts. Within weeks, the truth unraveled. Millions had been siphoned off. Email records showed Mark instructing an employee to alter the manifests, and one message, sent late at night, sealed everything. "Once Harold's out of the way, the company's ours," Mark had written. The hearing took place exactly 5 years after my conviction. I walked into the same courtroom, but this time I wore a tailored gray suit and carried evidence instead of chains. Emily sat on the opposite side, pale and trembling. Mark's confidence was gone. He looked like a man already hearing prison doors in his head. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and precise. "Mr. Whitaker, the court finds that your original conviction was based on falsified evidence. The charges against you are hereby vacated. You are a free man, and the state will issue a formal apology." I didn't smile. I just nodded. Then she turned to Mark. "Mr. Collins, based on this evidence, the court is issuing a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and perjury." The bailiffs moved quickly. Mark shouted, tried to protest, but the handcuffs clicked shut. Emily began to cry. For the first time in 5 years, she looked at me. "Dad, I didn't know it would go this far." I studied her face. The little girl who used to sit on my shoulders at county fairs was gone. In her place stood a stranger who'd traded her father for a bigger house and a nicer car. "You chose him," I said quietly. "Now you live with that choice." A year later, Mark was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. Emily avoided jail by cooperating, but the company was gone. The court returned its ownership to me, along with a settlement for wrongful imprisonment. I didn't keep it long. At 63, I was too tired to rebuild an empire. Instead, I sold the business and started a small trucking school for young drivers who needed a second chance. Men with records, men who'd made mistakes, men who just needed someone to believe in them. One afternoon, as the sun set over the training yard, a familiar car pulled in. Emily stepped out. She looked older, thinner, her confidence replaced by something softer. "Can we talk?" she asked. We sat on a wooden bench near the trucks. For a long time, she didn't say anything. "I thought Mark loved me," she finally said. "I thought you were the problem. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late." I nodded slowly. That's the thing about choices. They don't come with undo buttons. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Is there any chance you can forgive me?" I looked out at the horizon where the sky was turning gold. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It doesn't erase the past, but it frees you from carrying it forever. "I forgave you the day I walked out of prison," I said, "but forgiveness doesn't rebuild what was broken." She nodded, understanding. We sat there in silence as the last truck returned to the yard. Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, about truth, about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. I lost 5 years of my life, but I gained something more valuable, clarity. And sometimes that's worth more than all the money in the world.